My name is Ryan Phillips. I work here at Life with Pigs Farm Animal Sanctuary, and I've been a pretty much full-time vegan activist for the past 10 years since I realized what was happening. I went vegan shortly after watching the documentary Food Inc. I had never really realized what was happening. I think I kind of lived in that safe headspace that we all create where we think that animals die of old age and that's how they end up on our plates, you know, some happy story that doesn't involve any suffering. And so watching Food Inc., seeing that animals were being slaughtered, you know, and not living in, you know, remotely good conditions sort of set things in motion. And I think one of the most powerful things that I heard that just sort of solidified it was, strangely, Alec Baldwin saying, if you drink a glass of milk, you kill a baby cow. And I thought, that's crazy, that must be an exaggeration. And then finding out what actually happens on dairy farms and how they treat the male calves sort of made me realize that it wasn't an exaggeration at all. And so just sort of the understanding that if I go to the store and I buy an animal product, I'm paying for those animals to suffer, and I don't want to do that. And so I have a choice of either convincing myself I'm okay with not living by my values or living by my values and going vegan. And so pretty much overnight, I decided I was going to go vegan.
I'm Mallory Phillips. I help manage Life with Pigs Farm Animal Sanctuary, and I've been vegan for almost 3 years now. I actually was a pescatarian and then a vegetarian for many years, and then something just sort of clicked in me. I started to learn more about, you know, the dairy industry and the egg industry, and I just decided, you know, I didn't want to have any part in, you know, causing the suffering of animals in any way, and pretty quickly got into, you know, animal rights activism. Not too long after that, you know, I had spent some time volunteering at sanctuaries, and then actually met my husband, Ryan Phillips, who had already started a farm animal sanctuary, and so married him and sort of married into the sanctuary, and now get to live with cows and pigs and sheep and turkeys, chickens, and all sorts of animals. And you know, I love every minute of it, and it just reminds me, you know, every day why I'm vegan, and you know, that there's no difference between you know, the dogs that, you know, I had as, you know, companion animals, cows that come to the window, you know, mooing for carrots or hugs. You know, they're really so much alike. And you know, if I wouldn't, you know, harm a dog or an animal we consider a pet, you know, there's no reason why I would want to harm, you know, any other animals, any farm animals. So
She married me for my cow.
I did. I married him for his cow.
Because of, I think, living by sort of a moral system that can be consistent, whether someone's religious or not, an idea of do unto others. You know, you don't want someone doing stuff to you that you know, don't like, so why would you do it to anyone else? And I think a lot of times as humans, we like to draw this line of that really only applies to other humans. And there's really no justification for that. There's no reason to think that any other species or any other animal deserves to be treated in a way that we wouldn't want to be treated if we were that animal. Philosophically, you know, I think you can take philosophers like Immanuel Kant, who argued, you know, the same sort of thing without really having a religious background to it, of treat every action that you take as if it's something that would be universal. And so if we can treat animals that way, then we can be treated that way. And no one would want that. No one would want to live in a cage their entire life. No one would want to be slaughtered long before old age. And so I think, you know, there's a lot of great reasons to go vegan. There's a lot of great motivations for people, but I think ultimately it should always be grounded in the idea that, you know, just morally to be consistent and to allow us to being attacked here, to be, you know, the I guess consistent in our values, have to actually treat others the way we want to be treated. And so, you know, that's what we try to do. I always think anything I would do for my human children, I want to do for our animal, you know, family. And, you know, I think it's the only way to have that sort of consistency.
there's no reason to cause suffering if we don't have to. And I think most people, if you ask them, do you want to harm an animal, or, you put a pig in front of them, with a knife and said, okay, if you want to eat, bacon, slit this pig's throat, I think the vast majority of people would be horrified by that idea. And I think, we have a lot of separation from, the food that we eat. It comes packaged, in plastic wrap in a grocery store, and, there's no connection with, the animal that came from. There's a disconnect between what people, feel is right, or what they'd want to participate in, and what they eat. So I think the more that people understand, who their food comes from, who their meat comes from, their milk, their eggs, the more they'll understand that's not really in line with, the values that they hold, or, the way that they would want to live their life. So I think, it's important to help people make that connection with animals, so that, we can all choose to, live in a world where we don't cause suffering when we don't have to.
Vegans get asked the question, well, do you force it upon your kids to be vegan? Or, why do you care what I do? It's my personal choice. When someone says that, it's so hard to not be shocked, because, you think that they can look at that and see that there's obviously a victim to their choices. The animals are always going to be a victim regardless of who's doing it. So if I'm eating the animal or someone else is eating the animal, it doesn't matter which one of us is doing it, that animal's still suffering. The idea that, morally I'm opposed to eating animals, why wouldn't we want to pass that value on to our children? Why wouldn't we want the people around us to share that value if we believe in it strongly? I think any sort of moral crusade of the past, no one went around arguing, like, hey, I'm against slavery, but I'm fine with someone else doing it. Like, if you're passionate about that cause, you're against that happening. To try to argue to someone who cares about animal rights or cares about the animals that the actions of others aren't their concern is to essentially take out the moral component and say that it is just a food choice, or it's just a sort of like a personal way that you want to live. And clearly, when you believe that the animals, are suffering, that the animals have moral rights that we should respect, there's no way to do that unless you believe that everyone should be of that same belief. It's no different than saying, hey, I don't kill people and I don't go and, steal from people, but I'm fine if my kids want to do that. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So the idea that I'm not in favor of hurting animals, of course I'm going to want my children or my friends or my family to share that, because I don't just view it as something that, feels good for me. It's something that I feel very strongly. So
I think that, for the majority of people, if they were walking down the street and they saw somebody, kicking a dog, they're going to step in and they're going to intervene. I mean, I know I would. And so, the same thing when I know that somebody is, hurting an animal, whether that's, a cow, a pig, a turkey, chicken, I want to stop that. And, I know if it were me in that situation, if I were, being bred to be slaughtered, having my babies taken away from me, I would hope that people would stand up for me, and I would hope that people wouldn't be quiet about it, and would, try to prevent that from happening. As a moral, decision, when we see something that's happening to somebody else who, can't speak for themselves, or, can't defend themselves, it's our obligation to, stand up for them and try to protect them.
And I think too, yeah, to like sort of piggyback on that, which I don't know if that's a vegan phrase or not. One of the ways that we talk about establishing how we want other humans to be treated is the idea of, if you remove yourself from the situation and you don't know who you are within a society, you want to create a society in which you could be anyone in that society and feel like it's a just society to you. And I think we can do the same adding animals in and not know, will I be a human? Will I be a wealthy human? What race will I be? Or could I potentially be a pig or a chicken within that society? And I think if you create a society where no matter who you end up within that scenario, you would feel like it was a just society, then you're living by sort of the moral values that you actually feel inside, rather than the moral values that are convenient for you because you benefit, you get treated how you wanted, and then everything, else is not your concern. And so I think applying animals to that scenario of sort of you don't know where you'll be within society helps people to understand how they should treat others. Right from the beginning, I knew I wanted to be involved in speaking out for animals. In college, I studied history at William and Mary, and one of my focuses was the sort of anti-slavery abolition movement. And I just remember sort of, I guess, like being in awe of the people, whether it was Frederick Douglass or John Quincy Adams, whoever it was, and how they put their life on the line for a cause. Oftentimes, the people that were fighting against it were, in very good situations relative to others. And so they had no, I guess, real push to fight for what they were fighting for because it didn't affect them as greatly. The runaway slaves at the time, had more of a push in terms of getting family freed and stuff like that. But they're still going up against these great odds. A lot of people want to kill them. A lot of people hate them just for being a voice, and they still did it. And I always found it so inspiring that they did it. I remember John Quincy Adams used to get death threats, handwritten, signed with the time and date that they were going to kill him because of speaking out against slavery in the House of Representatives, and just thinking how, just sort of great it was that didn't stop him, that it was like, if that's the price of doing the right thing, then so be it. And so when I realized what was happening in regards to how we treat animals, I felt like this is something where I can raise my voice and try to make a difference, where there's this huge injustice and this atrocity that we're committing, as a human species, and hopefully change things for the better. And so right from the beginning, some of the things I did, I had never been an artist. In fact, my art teacher in elementary school had told my grandma that I should definitely not become an artist based on my skills at the time. But I decided that one great way that I could potentially make a difference was doing illustrations and cartoons with messages put into them. And so I started drawing, just like I would do sometimes like 6 hours a day to try to teach myself to draw so that I could sort of get the vegan message out there. And over time, it became more and more successful, where I would take things, and I think one of my most successful, which ended up being banned on Facebook for nudity, of all things, but was a drawing of a cow who was forcefully or artificially impregnating like a human female, and it said, "Don't worry, all our humans are cow-mainly treated." And so, it was kind of taking the reverse role of saying, what if cows did this to humans? How awful would it be? And it took off, like it was being shared everywhere. And then Facebook decided, because the female didn't have pants on, I guess that was nudity. But on the other hand, they can show just about anything on Facebook. So I don't know, it's interesting. But so just stuff like that. At one point, I think Moby shared a drawing I did is like just of a gun and bullets, and it said, and you might not be able to use this, but it said, shooting like innocent animals won't give you a bigger dick, but it sure will make you one. And so, just stuff like that. The idea of just taking a vegan message, putting an illustration with it, and getting it out there was one of the ways I started. Another thing that I did was go to slaughterhouses and take photos of the pigs heading to slaughter, or sometimes chickens, and just trying to capture, I guess, sort of the personality of the pigs on the truck. In a way, I think I hid behind the camera because I could capture it without really living it, whereas other people would go and sort of experience, sort of the just the torment emotionally of seeing these animals going to their slaughter, whereas I wanted to sort of capture who they were, so that I could share that video and people would see, like, that pig looks scared, or that pig looks like, they're curious about why suddenly they're out in this world when they've lived in a shed for 6 months. I could hide it behind the camera till I got home and then put the video together, and then I would just be emotionally destroyed and, hated the world pretty much every day. Probably, I think being burnt out was just like normal, like just feeling like there's no way I'm gonna get up tomorrow and do this again. And then just feeling that compulsion of, I don't do this, no one wants to be doing this, so I've got to. And so I did that for probably 3 years, of just feeling constantly burnt out. And then that's when Pumpkin, the pig, came into my life. She was a breeder pig, who was done being breeded. And so it was pretty clear they were probably going to either put her down or send her to the Humane Society, where often pigs, once they get bored, they start to get a little agitated, and at that point they put them down because it's not safe, they say. And so I agreed to adopt Pumpkin. We brought one of her babies, Charlotte, with her so that she could, keep at least one of the babies she had over the years, and I knew that they would stay together for life in the wild, and wanted to, at least give her that minimal, I don't even know what to call it, like it should just be expected that she be able to keep her babies, but wanted to allow her that opportunity. And they still, to this day, are very tightly together, family, and adore each other. But it's when Charlotte came into my life that my whole focus of activism changed, because with Charlotte, I could go out into public with a pig, just hang out, let Charlotte be Charlotte. She'd be eating grass, and people would walk by and their reaction would be, to say something like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna eat pigs anymore, or I wanna go vegan, without me doing anything other than just hanging out with the pig and maybe telling them a little bit about how pigs suffer. It seems so much easier to get the message across by having, the victim essentially of animal ag with me. That started shifting me away from where I had been before. And, prior to doing activism with Charlotte, there had been times when people had thrown cigarettes at me. There'd been times when people had physically attacked me. One person pretended like he was going to shoot me. Some people pretended like they were going to jump out of their car to beat me up. I'd had people threaten me. One guy almost attacked me with his baby in a carrier on his back. Just crazy things. And so being able to go out with a pig and do activism where essentially Charlotte being Charlotte and being seen could tell the story just seemed like the most powerful form of activism possible. And so from there, I ended up starting Life with Pigs Sanctuary, and from time to time we go for walks with Charlotte or with our cows. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll take a dog and a pig, or a dog and a cow. And so what it does is helps people to see, they're walking their dog, they're walking their cow or their pig, and there really isn't this difference that we've created in our mind. And so I think in some ways, it, to me, seems like both the easiest and the most powerful way of doing activism. The first time I took Charlotte for a walk, I used to go walk around Colonial Williamsburg and just talk to people about veganism. I might hand out pamphlets. I might hold up signs there because it's a public road in the middle. So you get, thousands of tourists each day from all over the country and the world walking through. And so I would try to do activism there. When Charlotte and Pumpkin came to live with me, I thought, well, I'll just bring Charlotte with me to go for a walk where I usually do my activism. And it's also connected to the college campus. And so I walked over onto William and Mary's campus and just had students, so both excited to see Charlotte, and then just from seeing her having that realization, hey, that's no different than the ham sandwich that I'm eating. And so their reaction was, I don't want to do that anymore because I find Charlotte to be worthy of having a life and not suffering. So how can I, apply this to others? That first time was so powerful because, just seeing that reaction without me having to really do anything, other than just hang out with the pig.
For me, activism is really just a part of my everyday life. Living here in the sanctuary, we're always taking pictures and videos and, posting things to social media and trying to, really show people, what it's like to live with cows and pigs and turkeys and chickens and, all these amazing animals. We really try to show their personalities and tell their stories and, let people see them the way that we see them, which is these very, unique individuals who, have very different personalities and, wants and desires and needs and are curious and loving and want to spend time with their family. And so, we try to capture that as much as we can and just share that with other people. That seems to be, a really powerful form of activism. I think that, when people make that connection between, their food and the animal that comes from, and they see that, they have been following the story of, Jenna, the calf, who's now, a full-size cow, and she's 2.5 years old, and, she would be, halfway to being slaughtered on, a dairy farm. And so, they make that connection, and, while it might just be milk at the store, they don't want to hurt Jenna, they wouldn't want to eat Jenna. And so, making that connection to their food, I think impacts people a lot when, they get to know an individual on that level. So that's, for me, I think the most important thing I can do is, for these animals is to, be able to tell their stories and try to, capture them, the way that they truly are.
We've noticed that like people around the world feel like our animals are a part of their family. And, a lot of times it's not people that are vegan, but all of a sudden they have like, Jenna feeling like, someone that they know so well. And then the power of knowing her so well sort of shifts their mind. Like, just, I think it was yesterday, we got a comment on a YouTube video of Jenna that said, sorry, Elvis is interrupting me here. A comment on one of our YouTube videos saying, I adore Jenna, I'm definitely going vegan. And so it's just knowing that just telling their stories has that power is definitely a huge part of what we do. Like going vegan and making friends are, usually not two things you associate together. I mean, it's gotten vastly better over the 10 years of being vegan. Initially, the expectation is you're going to lose friends and family who either communicate with you or want to communicate with you. And it's twofold. One is you feel so passionately that you need to do something, and so you are sharing the message. And that can be off-putting because people like to live in their comfortable bubble where, they don't have to think about things or challenge themselves. And so you're essentially challenging everything. And a lot of times with friends and family, there's this feeling on their part that if you now think that those things are not okay and they're wrong to do, and that you're basically judging all of your time that you ever spent with them, and you're saying that there was something wrong with it, rather than realizing that people can change and adapt and have new ways of viewing things and grow, and that they could grow with you by embracing this new understanding. But a lot of times what it does is makes people decide that they just are done with you, or they want to fight with you and argue in ways that are, they must realize to some degree absurd. But because it's such a, it's like the brain protects itself. And so if the brain is being told, hey, this thing that I'm doing is morally reprehensible, there's that choice of, can I change, or can I just deny that it's reprehensible? And unfortunately, the brain, I think, is typically better at denying reality than adjusting to it. And so you end up with a lot of people who will defend things that there's no way they actually feel good about. They'll say things that there's no way they actually feel, because it helps to compensate for that feeling of like, I don't really feel right about this. So,
Yeah, I think the biggest challenges that I've had is with friends and family after going vegan. I've heard it described as, when you're vegan, you're trying to pull drowning animals, out of the water, and then everyone around you, your friends, your family, everyone is throwing them back in, and that's what it feels like, a lot of the time. And after going vegan, I sort of had this, epiphany of, oh my gosh, I've been, this has been wrong. Like there's this, huge injustice going on towards animals, and so there's people that I'm close to and that I think are good people. And so, I was convinced that if I could just share this information with them, if they knew what I knew, then of course they would go vegan too. Of course they wouldn't, want to hurt animals, and of course they'd want to make the same changes I did. And I quickly discovered that that's not the case. And, it's hard when, there are people that, you believe are otherwise good people, and having to reconcile, that they have all of the same information that I have, and they're still choosing, this other path, and they're still, justifying it or okay with it, or, just simply don't care enough, to make that change. And so it's hard to, to still view those people the same way, and it changes relationships. And, it's hard to visit family because I don't want to sit at a table, where people around me are eating, the dead bodies of animals when they easily could have been, one of the animals that I live with now. And so it definitely, changes things, and it helps to, sort of surround yourself with other vegans. But, at the same time, reaching people who aren't vegan is, one of the most important things that we want to do. And so, we kind of have to, put ourselves out there and, try to talk to people who, are not vegan or are still eating animals. And, we go for walks with Charlotte or one of the pigs, and, people will make bacon jokes, or they'll yell something, from across the way, and having to hear, them talk about your loved one like that is really challenging. But, part of trying to make this change in the world is, you have to kind of deal with that and hear those comments and, keep pushing through it, and, not let it stop you or hold you back, and try to, still view the world as, being a place that you want to be, because it's very easy to, see the world as being this, evil place where, nobody cares, and there's so much suffering and pain. And so, making sure that, we take the time to spend time with the animals and each other, and just, enjoy what we have, and see, the happiness that the animals here have, I think offsets some of that sadness. But yeah, it's definitely difficult living in a non-vegan world.
yeah, and I think one other challenge is figuring out like the best approach, because I think some people are like very focused on just like sort of shoving the message down as aggressively as they can, and some people are focused on as being, I guess, as gentle as they can. And I think neither of those works for everyone, and so you have to sort of figure out how to sell a message that has so many reactions possible. And so knowing when to stand your ground and to fight for animals, and knowing when, sort of being tactfully kind about it can be more effective for certain people, and beating yourself up when you feel like you've done it wrong, and like feeling like you could have done better, almost like every day sort of like your actions determine like the fate of the world. It's like I think there's some sense of, like we have to achieve this as quickly as possible because so many are depending on things changing. One of the big things I noticed, I guess, like in terms of my health after going vegan was I used to have allergies all the time. It was like I lived sort of like one day on Benadryl where I was like semi-conscious, and then one day where I would just, disgustingly as it sounds, with snot just running down my face and feeling miserable. And so it was this every other day pattern for much of the year. After going vegan, I'm somewhat convinced it was the dairy, because I've heard so much about how it can sort of impact your system and have allergic reactions that actually impact how you react to other foods and other things. I have no allergies. I haven't taken Benadryl in years. Having that shift in my system, sort of align with that change was pretty huge. I know my cholesterol went way down at the time. I never get sick. If I do get sick, it's like not sick enough to feel sick, because I've never had to stop what I was doing. That may be a little bit just because I'm crazy and driven, but yeah, I have not been sick to the degree that I remember being prior to going vegan. But I think the biggest is sort of that mental wellness of knowing that I'm living my values and not having to feel like there's something I could be doing that I'm not, to actually align how I live with how I feel like I should be living. And so I think that's probably like the best benefit, is I don't have to sort of go to sleep each night knowing like, okay, I know I shouldn't be causing suffering in these ways, but I'm still doing it. So
Being vegetarian for a long time before going vegan, I didn't really notice too many physical changes. I know my big worry was giving up cheese, and I hear a lot of people say it, oh, I could never give up cheese. And, I've since learned that cheese is actually, very physically addicting in the body. And so, after about a month, that feeling went away. I didn't have any cravings for cheese anymore. Once I kind of understood, where those food products were coming from, it was pretty easy for me to give it up and, start to get used to, the taste of other things. I mean, we eat a lot of plant-based meats, or, plant-based cheeses. And so, at first it does taste a little different, but it's really, I think, just more about what you're used to eating. At least it was for me. Once I, got used to foods that taste, maybe a little different. And I think every day they're coming out with a new product that's, tastes a little bit too real for comfort. We actually, ate something the other day that I thought, this tastes a little too much like the real thing for me. But, just kind of adapting to that. And it happens, very quickly to where, I don't miss anything that I used to eat, before going vegan. But, emotionally, just that sense of, knowing that I'm not doing something that, goes against my values. I'm not, causing the suffering of animals. I'm not paying for, an animal to die when, there's absolutely no reason to. And that, I'm living, in line with, how I want the world to be. And every day I spend trying to make the world a better place. So although, it's challenging, I think, because you almost start to see the world as, much more negative, or at least for me, I think I have started to see the world more as it truly is, but at the same time, knowing that I'm not, contributing to that, and I'm doing everything I can to try to, change the world into a better place, is definitely a much more fulfilling way to live. I didn't notice any physical changes really, and again, I think just because I was vegetarian for so long that, kind of taking that extra step and cutting out dairy and eggs, I didn't really, notice much. I did discover that it's very easy to just continue to eat junk food and be vegan, so that's definitely something that, you have to watch out for. There are just so many, vegan products available. There's, the vegan equivalent of Reese's Pieces peanut butter cups, and so you could go eat a ton of those, and there's so many things that, are still unhealthy, and so, just because I went vegan didn't mean that I had to give up, dessert, or that I had to give up, snacks or things like that. So, I still have to make sure that I eat healthy and eat healthy foods. So, it's good in the fact that, you're not losing out on, things that you enjoy eating, but, at the same time, still have the same struggles as everyone else to, make sure we eat healthy.
yeah, it's like you can't be as healthy eating animals and animal products as you can by being vegan, but you can almost be as unhealthy if you
If you wanted to.
if you really put effort in, like you can be pretty unhealthy on vegan junk food.
Yep.
But
My only regret is not going vegan sooner. I think as someone who's always professed to be an animal lover, my whole life, even as a kid, the fact that I decided, being pescatarian or being vegetarian, was enough, or that, I continued to consume animal products. That's the only regret that I have.
yeah, I mean, I think, I feel that too, that sense of regret that it didn't happen sooner. Like, I don't in any way consider myself a perfectionist in regards to how I go about things, but I think I have like high standards, and so I feel like almost every day I regret that I didn't do more to change the world, to help animals. There's always that sense of, had I just been a little more focused or stole a little more time away from, whatever else I was doing, to focus on how I could help animals. There's just always that sense that I could somehow change the world more each day. And so the feeling that I can never quite live up to that's probably like the hardest, thing for me to accept. And so there's always that regret that I am not better than I am at doing what I want to do for animals.
Yeah, I think definitely any time that we spend like, even just watching TV in the evening or something, there's always that sort of voice in the back of my head that's like, how could you, be relaxing when there's animals out there suffering and you should be, trying to help them. And I think the fact that, the dogs and the pigs like to curl up and watch TV with us, helps
Yeah.
because, in spending time with the animals that do live with us is important. But, there's always that sense of guilt of how can I be, comfortable and relaxing in my home, knowing the animals are suffering. And so kind of trying to balance that, still being able to live life, maintain, a sense of normalcy somewhat and help the animals is, something that I think we're always trying to figure out.
Yeah. A big part of our diet is we'll make just, like rice and then like stir fry vegetables into it. Sometimes we'll add like the Gardein replacement, like vegan chicken strips. Sometimes we'll just add tofu to it, or sometimes we'll just eat it like that. And of course, there's things like peanut butter and jelly that, is pretty simple. A lot of sort of rice-based meals, whether it be beans and rice or it's a lot of tofu and potatoes. So it's, sort of like the vegan equivalent of meat and potatoes is like tofu and potatoes. And I mean, we'll just cook plain tofu, maybe salt it and eat it with potatoes. So, I mean, we found our own way to be very boring in our diet. Living on the sanctuary and like constantly being busy, cans of vegetables is a big hit with us. So just like a can of peas, a can of carrots, a can of green beans, like tends to be a staple for us because we can open it, eat it without even heating it, and then get back to whatever we're doing. We love to go get, like vegan pizza at places, or get Chipotle, like their sofritas. But by and large, it's a lot of, just kind of like veggies cooked with rice. And I don't know, in some ways I think sometimes I'm more just like I don't care about food, I'd much rather focus on this. So I think that probably ties into why we're a bit boring food wise. Almost like the I want to say like stoicism or something, where you're just like abstaining from too much pleasure because you're so focused. But I mean, I think the best way to get started and probably the most effective way to maintain it is to educate yourself on the fact that, one, the obvious is animals are suffering, their lives are miserable, regardless of if it's their best situation or the worst, but also to educate yourself on the health impacts of, the typical diet. We're literally ingrained from the day we are born, to the day you get out of 12th grade, that you need, to eat meat, you need eggs, and you need milk to be healthy, and otherwise you're going to be sickly. And so it's this drumbeat, this indoctrination that the government has basically created to fund these industries that they somewhat have a vested interest in. And so educate yourself that all that has been a lie, that all that has been part of this process of the government running the USDA, which in part exists to promote agriculture, which is predominantly animal agriculture in their mind. And so they're basically selling you on what they want to make a profit, who in turn, it's like this money going back and forth between the farms, and then the farms, donate to these campaigns, who then in turn send money back to the farms. And so realizing that this is what's happening and knowing that you could be healthier without eating those things, knowing that the rates of osteoporosis are highest in the countries where they drink the most, dairy, doesn't add up to we need dairy to have strong bones. And so once you realize that your health can be better, that the animals are suffering, and then tie in the fact that we're destroying the planet, because most of, the soy, the corn, and all the crops that, are sort of vegan in people's minds are being fed to animals, and we have to feed animals 10 times as much, at least, to get back 1 calorie, 10 calories for 1 calorie when we eat animal products. So we're wasting all this food while people are starving around the world, destroying the rainforest to grow these crops or to graze cattle. And so, if you realize I can make animals live better lives, I can live a healthier, longer life, my kids, my family, the people I care about can have healthier lives. And then, I can also not destroy the planet so that there's a planet for people to live on. There's really no way to escape that mind frame. Whereas if you just do it for your health, people kill themselves all the time by eating, poorly or making bad choices. If you just do it for the planet, a lot of people can make exceptions. And if you're doing it for the animals, there's no way around it. So you've got these three things sort of keeping you in check all the time. And so doing that, I think having that mind frame helps you stay strong. And then once you start, having all those things there will keep you strong, and then you'll stick with it, I think. So
I think that, visiting an animal sanctuary is a great way to, make that connection. And for me, even if I'm tempted by, or initially was tempted by the taste of something, knowing what animal, that product harmed, I have no desire to, consume that product. I got really good at reading food labels very quickly. And the nice thing about it is a lot of, animal products are allergens. And so they need to, call it out at the bottom of the food label. So if something's got milk in it, it will say contains milk or contains eggs. And so it's easy to, sort of check and make sure something is vegan. But just getting in the habit of, reading those ingredients, because you'll be surprised how many products, contain milk or contain eggs, even if, it seems like something that would be vegan or safe to eat. So getting used to that. And I think, kind of initially figuring out, what you can eat, getting kind of your staples, restaurants that you go to, finding, there what meals you eat or can eat. And, it just gets easier and easier as time goes on. You get, more comfortable with it, and what products, are safe for you to eat, and, just get better at it. So there is definitely a learning curve. At first it can be challenging, and you feel sort of, like, oh my gosh, there's nothing I can eat. I don't know what to do. And so it's just, pushing through that and understanding there's a lot of, vegan food out there, and, you'll figure it out. You'll muddy your way through it. And then, now it's very easy to go out and just, ask people, for if there's vegan menu items, or, knowing where to go. And, there's websites now like Happy Cow that, you can look up and see, what restaurants have vegan options, or all vegan restaurants. So it just gets easier, I think, all the time to find, vegan products.
yeah, and when they say most people have like 5 meals that they have a week, and they just repeat them. And so basically once you learn your new 5 meals and just start repeating them, like, you basically are in the same pattern, and you'll feel that same level of comfort with what you eat. You just have to establish that new pattern, and then it gets pretty easy. But I agree with, like, going to an animal sanctuary, living on an animal sanctuary. It's amazing how many times we hear people say, I really needed this, I've recently gone vegan, and this is a great reminder of why I'm doing it, because you're seeing right in front of you the victims that would have, potentially died because of a choice to say, oh, well, I'm just gonna have, this, like, dairy, the non-vegan ice cream, this one time. Well, that one time means that someone had to suffer. There's no animal product where an animal escapes suffering, so there's no amount that's safe for the animals in regards to eating animal products.
And I think it's important to find people, like you, and kind of find your community. Because when I first went vegan, it felt very lonely. I was, the only one pretty much I knew that was vegan, except for, someone that I volunteered with at an animal shelter, that, I run into every once in a while. And so, Facebook groups, finding meetups, animal activist groups, in your area. I think, it was a huge sense of relief for me, just to find other people, who felt the same way I did. So even, just Googling, animal activists in your area, animal sanctuaries, starting to volunteer, you can find that community of people, who think like you, and can be your support when you're struggling with, family or friends that don't understand, why you've made this change, or, why you feel this way. And so just having, feeling normal among others, is important when you feel, very different, most of the time. So that can be huge and can really help, to kind of do that right off the bat.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point. Like finding people like you, because I remember when I first went vegan, like I would make posts to Facebook about it, and I had nobody on there that was vegan. And you feel so alienated from the world when you feel like I'm the only person that realizes this stuff. I'm the only one that sees it. And it's also much easier for other people to gang up on you and make you feel like you're crazy. And then when you find people that, see things the way you see them and have accepted, reality for what it is, you start to feel stronger in standing up for what you believe in, because like you'll meet people who are mostly around non-vegans, and they tend to take a much more sort of passive approach to it and feel like, oh, I shouldn't be speaking out about this, and I shouldn't be making anyone feel bad about this. And it's like, once you're around other people that see how awful it is, you feel stronger that, hey, like, it's not my job to make someone feel comfortable, it's my job to fight for justice, for everyone. And the animals need me far more than someone needs to be comforted in their decisions. So, like, the only quote that stands out, and it was, at one point I wrote it on the back window of my car, and it was just, I used to, every day I'd write a message on the back of my car, and it would just be like either something that rhymed that came to my head or just some thought I had. And I figured whoever's driving behind me will, read this. And so one day I just came to me the idea of like, that animal rights are not a gift we give to animals. They're a birthright that we took from them. And so I put that on the back of my car, and someone turned it into a meme. And so I don't mean to quote myself, but it's pretty much the only quote that, has really like stuck in my head, because, I think in some ways it's sort of the center of everything that we do and that we feel. It's this idea that like, we're not fighting for some gift that, animals, we can give them and they can thank us. We're literally trying to give them back the lives that like they had from the beginning, and in many ways it's, I guess, like a take on Jean-Jacques Rousseau's like, everyone's born free, but everywhere they're in chains, the idea that everyone should be free, everyone should be able to enjoy their life. And so that was sort of, where that stemmed from. Don't put off making this decision, to make a change in your life. I've literally never met someone who went vegan and said, God, I wish I had waited a little longer to do what I feel like is the right thing. And so if you're thinking that it's probably what you want to do, the sooner you do it, the better you're going to feel about it. Like, nobody wants to think, oh yeah, for 5 years I knew something was really wrong, but I just kept putting it off. Like, you're gonna feel good about making that choice to finally make that difference for animals.